Exactly. So we start the recording now. And I would like to give an overview of what we will cover in today's session. This format that we are doing today are the so-called spotlight webinars. We're running these webinars on a regular basis, and it's a pretty simple, straightforward format. So we focus on one EU program at a time, and especially we look at what is in there for the civil society sector. So this is a good opportunity for you to get a quick overview, for you to get a sense of, is this something for me? Is this program interesting? What are the objectives? What are the open calls? What are concrete opportunities? So does it fit to my work and my organization? And if yes, you learn also about what I just said, concrete opportunities, who you should reach out to if you have more questions, and also how to apply. And today the focus is on the EU Just Transition Fund. And we are happy to have Terence Connolly with us. And this is also how we will do it. You see the agenda here. We will start with a short presentation by Terence. We'll learn about what the Just Transition actually is, what the EU Just Transition Fund is about. And afterwards, Terence and me will have a conversation around a couple of questions to dig a bit deeper here into some aspects of the fund, of the concrete possibilities. And then it's your turn. We have a Q&A, so this is your possibility to ask questions to Terence. And so you're either welcome to speak up during the Q&A, or if you have a question already during the presentation or while we have our short interview, you're very welcome to put them in the chat. Just write them in the chat. We will get back to them in the Q&A session. And my colleague Emily, she will collect the questions and then we will answer them in the end. And we finish up with some supports available from Access Europe. And as I mentioned already in the beginning, hi to everyone who just joined. We will send the presentation and we will send the recording in a follow-up email to you. And we will also put it on YouTube, everything. You will get all the information afterwards. Yes, so that was it already for now from my side. And I would like to hand over to Terence.
Thanks very much, Christina. I'll just share my screen here and give you a quick overview of the fund. And thanks everybody for coming along this morning. We're very keen to get in touch with parts of the community and voluntary sector because there are some opportunities in the Just Transition Fund, and you know it's through networks like this that it's possible to reach out. So thanks very much to Christina and to the Wheel for this opportunity to talk to you today. So in terms of the Just Transition Fund, first of all, a little about ourselves and the Eastern and Midlands Regional Assembly. There are 3 regional assemblies in the Republic of Ireland, ourselves, the Southern Regional Assembly and the Northern and Western Regional Assembly. And part of our remit is the management of regional funding, of which the Just Transition is part of it. Now, we're a little unusual here in that our territory for the Just Transition doesn't exactly match with the Eastern and Midlands territory, but I'll have a map of that coming up shortly. So we represent all the local authorities from Dublin over to Offaly, Westmeath and Longford, and yeah, it's unusual. It's almost it's not quite new. Other parts of Europe are very used to having this type of regional thinking. Like I always give Bavaria as an example. Like if you go to Germany, Germany's divided up into regions. Similarly, if you go to France, it's divided up into regions. Or Spain, you know where Galicia is, you know where Andalusia is. So regional thinking, people are very used to it in Europe. Not so much in Ireland. It's part of our history, to be honest. We didn't gain independence as regions. We gained independence as one nation, and as such, we're not as used to regional thinking. But we've adapted these structures to fit in with that type of bottom up local governance. So very briefly, what is a just transition? So it's defined by Eurofund as the transition to a climate neutral economy while securing the future and livelihoods of workers and their communities. Sometimes I give the example of, well, what's an unjust transition? And look, if you're old enough, you remember I'm barely old enough, but I remember, you know, the early 80s on television, and you saw what was happening in the United Kingdom as coal mines were shut down. And you know, there were similar scenes played out across Europe at that time. And I think lessons were learned, which is you can't just shut down a whole sector of your economy and then expect people to suddenly recover. You have to put mechanisms in place that allow a transition from one economic activity to another, and that's very much the thinking behind the just transition. A lot of the mechanisms that are in place come from the ILO, I think, in Switzerland. It's very much from a labor organization, a type of background that this concept was created. And the European Commission embraced that idea and tied it into the European Green Deal. If you know, we're all aware of climate change and climate action, and we're aware of what has to happen, and really, you know, if we were to repeat the mistakes of the past, it just won't work. You have to bring people with you when you're moving from from a high carbon intensive economy to a low carbon economy. But another thing I want to get across with this slide is that the just transition isn't something in the future. It's been going on in the Midlands of
Harry,
Ireland.
just
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. We're not seeing your screen at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Just because you mentioned the slide, I thought it's introduction.
Let's try again.
Yes.
No.
Yes, now we're there.
I was
There you
wondering,
are.
it didn't have that little green band around it, or the red band.
Yes. So that
There we go.
looks good.
There we go.
Now it's on, now it's on full screen, but it was really good storytelling that you
Well,
did.
well,
So
nobody missed anything. I'm going very
no,
slowly.
no,
I need to actually speed up, so you only missed one slide.
no
So,
worries.
so,
Go
so
ahead.
so the transition's been going on in the Midlands since the 90s. You know, you might remember, I suppose, Fraban and over in you know, in parts of Kildare, like there were those giant cooling towers, and they came down in the 90s and into the 2000s. And obviously, very recently, like the harvesting of peat for electricity production. I mean, without the power stations, the harvesting really was just for Edenderry or one or two others, and for horticultural reasons. So it's been winding down for a while, but obviously it's the last peat harvesting shut down very suddenly there quite recently. So the transition has been ongoing for a while, but it's not over. While things have shut down, the economy is still adapting in the Midlands, and I suppose one thing we come across is that uh, while with the broader economic growth of the country, you know, the Midlands isn't being left behind this time, in the sense of job creation. Um, it's the robustness of the economy which is a worry, because, you know, in previous recessions, it's the Midlands that gets hit first, or you know, the employment tends to be precarious, and really what we want the Just Transition Fund to do is to put something more robust in place. So that's that links then to the single specific objective. So if anybody's aware of ERDF funding or funding types like that, you know, there's lots of different objectives that you apply under. The JTF just has one, and that's the enabling regions and people to address the social, employment, economic and environmental impacts of the transition towards the Union's 2030 targets for energy and climate and a climate neutral economy of the Union by 2050. So I have this in every presentation I do, and the reason for that is, this is the focus of the fund, but also when you're applying to any grant within the fund, just to remember this objective, and to always refer back to it while you're putting together your application, because if you drift too far away from this, you're drifting away from a successful application. So in terms of the territory, so it's not a national fund. Nowhere across Europe is it a national fund. So a boundary had to be put around the eligible area. There were lots of studies done at the national level. People and Places report, I think, was one of the most significant. And initially, the European Union just wanted them. They like their and rightly so, they like their data gathering, and they like data gathering in nice niche geographic units. And so the Midlands region, or the Nuts 2 region, is Laois, Offaly, Westmeath and Longford. But obviously Ireland were like, well, no, other areas were impacted by the shutdown of Bord-na-Móna and ESB generation from peat. So there was a much wider area looked at nationally. But eventually this is the territory that was decided upon. So that the four Midland counties are still there in their entirety, along with Roscommon. And then you have the municipal district of Ballinasloe in Galway, which takes up a good chunk of the east of the county. You have Carrick-on-Suir and Thurles in Tipperary, and then you have Athy and Clonmanute in Kildare, and this makes up the territory. So if you have a project within those boundaries, congratulations, you don't need to worry about this map anymore. If you're located outside this area, you can still apply to the fund, but you need to demonstrate how you're benefiting this territory. So, you could be in Nina, for example, which is slightly outside, or an even better example is Cloughjordan, which is just on the boundary with Offaly. But it's there's a lot of activity and a lot of people in the area who would live in Offaly or work in Offaly. So if you're putting together a project, you'd have to demonstrate how you're benefiting people living within the territory. Now, this is the first iteration of the Just Transition, so this map is likely to evolve in the next programming period, but this is where we're starting from. Target groups, very broad. I won't read this out to you, but it looks at the entire community. Now, the core focus obviously is former peat workers, but with that, if you go back to that idea of creating a robust economy in the Midlands, you need to involve everybody and include everybody in that, because it's not just peat workers who were affected by the shutdown, it's the economies around the peat workers. Like that there is it's a picture of the power station in Lanesborough, and it really dominates the town. Like it's this huge power station in not quite in the middle of the town, but it's right on the edge of it. And the town, if you like, while it existed before the power station, it largely grew because of it. And you see similarly in Shannon Bridge, you have this power station looming over the town. And I suppose that gives you an idea of why there's such a broad grouping here, because not just the people within the factories are impacted, the towns around them, their families, their relatives, schools, and interestingly, a lot of the seasonal work, because the bogs aren't harvested all year round. So there's quite a focus on agriculture here, because a lot of farmers that were getting seasonal work on the bogs were affected by the transition. So it's quite broad, and certainly the community and voluntary sector fit very well into the fund, because of the activity that goes on in these communities. So the fund itself, it's 169 million, and it's broken down into three priorities. And I'll fly through these because I'm getting aware of the time. So the first priority is around generating employment by diversifying the local economy. If you relate it back to that single specific objective, it's very clear where that priority is coming from. And as a result, over half the fund is going to this first priority. Getting the economy diversified and getting people into employment is the number one thing the fund wants to do. That's done through 3 different actions led by 3 different delivery partners. The first one is around supporting the economic diversification of the local economy through the development of the regenerative tourism sector. So tourism is very much underdeveloped in the Midlands, and it's seen as a high potential growth area for economic activity. So Fáilte Ireland are delivering on that. Pobal, who probably a lot of you are familiar with through your day-to-day work, are looking at supporting the implementation of local and regional economic strategies. So I think that there'll be a bit more focus on this in the discussion later on. And certainly there's a call open at the moment with a lot of opportunities there, but there's one coming up in November, which might be even more interesting. And finally, there's support the research, development and innovation in the bioeconomy sector. So that's run by the Department of Agriculture. And again, that's not quite, I wouldn't say high stakes. It's not a high stakes type of gamble. It's not a gamble at all. If you want to replace one core industry, you've got to seek out another type of core industry to replace it. And the bioeconomy very much links to the circular economy. It's largely an agricultural territory, rural territory. So how do you leverage that, and how do you leverage the circular economy to extract value and new products throughout the whole production chain in the bioeconomy? So that's very interesting. There's a number of research projects going on there. So you can see some of our targets. We're looking at supporting about 453, not about, that's the precise figure, looking at 453 enterprises receiving support. That's either direct financial support or indirect support. 5 local economic and community plans or regional enterprise plans being implemented. So again, this is directly linked to that Pobal scheme, and then 16 enterprises cooperating with research institutions. The 2 of those are currently open. So the Fáilte Ireland scheme is open to actually not just SMEs. If you're a community group and you've some sort of tourism activity that you're thinking about, certainly the door is wide open to Fáilte Ireland at the moment. And then the Pobal scheme has opened the first tranche of funding is for large scale projects. So you're looking at 200,000 to 1 million, and then up to 5 million euro for the REP projects. Very large scale. So the way into those, if you're a small group, is to get in touch with your local authority. So some of them will have their standalone projects. Others will be putting together consortia. So that's the first bit of advice in this hour. Get in touch, reach out to your LECP or your LECP chief officer, I think they're called, in your local authority, and just ask them about their draft LECP plan. That's your first step, and see if you fit in there into that. And they're generally very broad at high level goals, so you should be able to see yourself in there somewhere. And then find out if there's a project application being considered under that. And then on the bioeconomy one, so a call just closed on that, the 2023 call, but there'll be another call in 2024. So I don't want to assume anybody here is not involved in the bioeconomy sector, but if you are, or you know anyone who is, they should be keeping an eye out for that next call. Next priority, I'll fly through this one. It's more the economic one. It's about the restoration of degraded peatlands and the regeneration of industrial heritage assets. So again, linking back to that single specific objective, this is the part of the environmental bit. ourselves in Emma, we're working with the NPWS on supporting the restoration and rehabilitation of degraded peatlands. If you're a community organisation who owns peatland, or you're a peatland community, this is probably the one for you. Then the Department of Agriculture is running another one on the Midlands Carbon Catchment Scheme. So again, this is a big research project, and it will be very much linking to farmers. And then Fall to Ireland are looking at the regeneration and repurposing of industrial heritage assets. This is around trail development, mostly across Bord na Móna lands. But perhaps if you're a community group with bogland on the edge of a Bord na Móna land, this could be of interest to you as well. And finally, priority 3, just very quickly, there's decarbonisation of local bus routes. So that's happening with the NTA. There'll be 1 or 2 routes which they'll be analysed, and electric buses put on them where it makes sense. And then the installation of publicly available charge point infrastructure. So that just closed recently. So if you've applied to that already for a charger for your community centre, the Pobble are doing the administration on it, so they're going through the applications at the moment. So there'll be a few months of analysis there, and they'll be back in touch with you in probably early in the new year. And then there's our links. This will be circulated afterwards, but if you were to pick one thing off this, subscribe to us at emra.ie/JTF subscribe. And we try and run, if there's a new call open, we run online briefings to let people know about the new opportunities. And there's also newsletters to keep you up to date with new calls as they launch. So thanks very much. And yeah, I'll chat now with Christina and see if we can drag some more information out of me.
Thanks, Terry. Excellent. This was a great overview. I think it's especially important first to say what is a just transition, because exactly what you said, right? To see, is there any unjust transition, or what does it mean, especially also for this fund? So what is like the definition behind? So I thank you for also clarifying that in the beginning. I think you get that question probably pretty often.
No, and that's the weird thing. The first time we got that question was Corlin and Og in Offaly, so it's a youth, it's like a youth parliament, and they're the ones who pointed out everybody jumps into talking about funding, and they're like, nobody's told us what a just transition is. It's like, was it one of those light bulb moments, which is like, yeah, we're all so obsessed with the money. Sometimes we don't stand back and ask what are we doing it for.
Exactly. So good that you clarified that first. So then we can finally jump to the money. No, what I would like to ask you, no, it's important, of course, because as you actually said, you have to link it back always to this objective, right? To make sure, okay, this is really like serving the cause that the EU Just Transition Fund also is aiming for. I would like to clarify 1 or 2 questions before we go to like what are actually opportunities for the civil society sector. You already mentioned it while you were speaking. I would just like to follow up on some of them. What I would like to know is, you were talking about the territory and the border regions. So if you happen not to be part of this territory that is outlined, you said it is possible to join, but you have to show how you benefit this. Like, how is it benefiting like the consortia or the program or the community probably? Yeah. How would you do that? So you really need to make a case for that. What would you need to bring to prove it?
I suppose the what would be a good example of it? If you were to say like very randomly a training program, so if you were developing a training program, and let's say the training's not happening, like we've had, again, there's lots of little problematic areas around the border. Like I hate these lines on maps because nothing fits it.
Yes,
We don't live on lines on maps, but that's how things are
exactly.
divided up. So like Gurteen Agricultural College, for example, is just across the border in North Tipperary. But so many people from the territory go to Gurteen College as farmers. So that's one example of where it's outside the territory, but it's benefiting people directly who live in the territory.
I see that.
So
Okay, good
that
example.
sort of argumentation needs to be brought across in an application. Now, under the LECP REP plans, I think there is that flexibility. Now, the Fall to Ireland scheme, because of the number of applicants they're expecting a lot of schemes. They're keeping the boundaries fairly tight. So they're like, okay, if you're not on the boundary, no. But with the public schemes, if you're slightly outside like that and you're benefiting and you can prove the benefit internally, then great. Another example would be if you were to take the bioeconomy scheme as an example. So this is maybe not a great one for the community sector, but it'll show you the thinking. Like if the large agricultural science part of UCD. So if you're working on the bioeconomy, it would almost be nonsensical that you would exclude them from applying to work on that, because that's where the expertise is. But
I
they
get
have
the
to
point.
demonstrate that they're bringing their expertise down to the territory and that their expertise will benefit and help grow
Okay.
the economy of the territory. So that's on that big scale. So if you're, but I think a lot of the community and voluntary sector, like the work is very focused locally. So if for example, again, I'll stop taking that. So let's look at Galway. Part of the county is in there. If you're doing community work in Galway City, there's no way you can link that back to benefiting the territory.
I see.
So that doesn't fit in the fund.
Yes.
That's how you need to think when you're looking at that map.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. I was just wondering how that worked because exactly there are not really clear borders, right? I see also that there are questions in the chat. Before we go to that, I would just quickly ask you, you mentioned the opportunities for community and voluntary sector, especially for the calls, and you already recommended to say, look, go to your local authority and ask what is there. So what you would recommend is to join existing consortia or projects that are developed, right?
Well, look at your project first.
Okay.
That's so if it makes no sense, if you've got a €50,000 project, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
there's so one thing I mentioned, and I need to dive into more depth. So in November, probably at the end of November, there's another call opening under that public scheme, and
Yeah.
it's a community and enterprise scheme. So that's a de minimis scheme. So probably a lot of people here are familiar with that. It's for projects under €200,000. So if you've got a small project that's like 50, 60, €100,000, wait for that to open, I think. If it doesn't make sense to be part of a consortium, then don't twist yourself in knots trying to join one. Wait for that one to open. If you have a big idea, and even if you don't have a big idea, if you have €100,000 idea, but you can't do it on your own, you need the local authority involved, then it makes sense to join a consortium. So always look at what do you need to deliver your project. So if you need a consortium, go talk to your local authority now, because they're putting together their applications under the scheme that's open. And if you don't need a consortium, hang on for that community and enterprise scheme to open up in November.
That's a very good recommendation, actually. I come to the questions in the chat in a second. I just would like to clarify. So, community voluntary sector. So, no, I forgot my question. Great. No.
I'm
Oh
glad
yeah.
it
Oh no, I
doesn't
got
just
it
happen
back.
to me. So.
I got it. I got it back. So you mentioned it's like the first time this program is running, right? The Just Transition Fund. So you don't have actually like best practices or projects like beneficiaries. So, but if you would say what kind of projects are you looking for? Could you frame that a bit? So what would be like not perfect but ideal project. Can you say that?
Yeah,
Is
no,
it possible?
because while the EU just transitioned, this is the first time there is a national Just Transition Fund which is
Yes.
run
Yes.
beforehand. So you know, look at that for inspiration. If you Google National Just Transition Fund, it'll bring you to the Department of the Environment or the gov.ie website, and there's a whole list of the selected projects on that. So I think there's some good examples in there for the types of projects. This is if you're building your own project.
Great.
If you're joining a consortium that a local authority is running, or a regional enterprise body, or something like that, again, talk to them. So talk to them about your idea and see where it matches with their idea. You know, it's general funding advice. Don't twist your project so much to fit with something else that you can't deliver it. Because you know there's dangers to getting funding and then not being able to deliver as well. So that's a bit of advice there. And maybe just for the Fall to Ireland scheme. So if you do something that links to tourism, again, I'm just taking random things that I was seeing around the place. I think there's a community group working on there's a courthouse in Burr, an old building there. Shannon Bridge, I think, have worked with some old buildings. You know, if you're something like that, where you're a community group and you're trying to do up, create a new centre for a new activity, that's a very good one to go to your local authority with. They probably already know about it because you're probably talking to them already. So just get that bumped up their priority list for an application.
Great.
So
Thank you so much. That was an excellent recommendation again. I would now start with the questions that we have in the chat, and would start with the first one from Johnny. And he asks, Terry, could you mention about the importance of collaboration between community organizations in applying for just transition funding?
yeah, I think certainly for the current scheme that's open. So I'd even encourage local authorities to collaborate. So what would be a good example? If you're a local authority and you're considering doing up, you know, you think under the Just Transition, okay, if we do up this part of the village that's near a power station, yeah, that's great for the works. But you can really strengthen your project by saying, well, there's this community group here besides the area we want to do up. These businesses are around here that we would, and kind of show how you're bringing your community together to do the projects. That it's not just going to be bricks and mortar. That actually, you know, you're bringing the people and the groups on board. And similarly with community organizations, if you're going for the call that's open, the LECP or EP call, they're of a scale that even if you applied for the funding yourself and you won it yourself, because of the scale, you know, you need help with the admin, and local authorities are good at admin. So even from that point of view, joining up to a local authority-led project can help you into the future that way. So like not every organization has every skill. So
Yes.
where it make, again, that phrase, where it makes sense. If you're writing your project application and you go, oh, do you know what, we need to do more outreach, but we don't have the skills to do that. Maybe you know, maybe bring in another organization that has those skills.
Yes.
So where it makes sense, because at the end of the day, a reviewer is going to sit down, somebody who doesn't know you, just has a checklist of eligibility criteria and a general sense of what the Just Transition Fund is about. And they're going to want to see, does this project make sense? Can it be delivered? So yeah, where it makes sense, bring in somebody else to work with you.
Great. Thank you so much. That's really good tips here. I got a question via DM, and it says actually that apparently some already had a look at the application process and found that it's pretty complicated. And they were asking for where to find support, especially for community groups, if they would like to apply. So is there an email contact or guidelines,
Yeah,
something like
so
that?
if you contact Pobble and if you're looking at the website, there's actually a list of events that they're planning. There's one on the 7th of November in Tullamore. Definitely go along to that. So there's a lot. It was a learning from the National Just Transition Fund that not every organization can write applications, and of course organizations can't write applications, but how do you almost hand holding, but how do you create something that, like, funding is complicated, applications are complicated, there's no way around that, but you can help people to get through the process. And so particularly for the LECP, for that 200,000 to 1 million bracket linked to local economic and community plans, there's two ways to apply for that. The first is if you're a local authority, for example, again, and you're used to these type of applications. They're ready to go. You just go in and you fill in the form and ask your questions, and off it goes. If you're not used to it, and actually some local authorities are actually taking this route. I was talking to one yesterday, and they need time. and because they need time, they're looking at what's called the concept note route. So this is
Yes.
where you can put in a pre-application.
Yes.
So you fill in your form. It asks for basic information. You don't need everything. Like, there's no expectation for you to have your Gantt chart worked out, or your letters of support or anything like that. You just fill it in, and Pobble will then provide feedback to you on what bits need improvement, or is this a viable project idea,
Right.
or are you completely wide of the mark? Are you so far outside the territory that you wouldn't succeed if you applied? So they'll offer that feedback on the concept
Excellent.
note. Now it's it's not just a one pager. It does ask a few questions, but a bit of the advantage of that is, well, if some of the work is then done for the full application form, so it
Exactly.
mirrors the full application form, so that
Exactly.
when you go to fill that in, you're just tweaking your concept note
Yeah.
stuff. So.
And also you get a feedback, does it make sense to actually put all the resources then in a full application or not? Because if they say no, then it's definitely helpful for the process, for my
Exactly.
decision if I go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
great. I have another question from, I think it's James, and he asks about the eligibility requirements for a grant bigger than 200K. Not so sure if you can answer that, because probably it's different eligibility
It's
requirements, right?
Yeah, depending on what you're going for. So if you look at the scheme, the scheme guidelines, so whether it's the Fáilte Ireland one or the Pobble one, or any of the others, the guidelines will have the eligibility criteria in there. So
We can share
generally,
those.
yeah, and look, with the Pobble scheme, state aid is an issue everywhere. There's no hiding from it. But we've tried to design it so that if you're not an undertaking, so if you're a community group and you don't make any profit, and you're a bog standard community group, then there's no real limitations. You're quite free to come up with whatever idea you want, because this is the kind of balance we were trying to achieve. If you want economic diversification, you need innovation, and then you need the freedom to come up with ideas. But that said, if it turns out that you're an undertaking, we've picked three very broad block exemptions, and you'll see when you on the public scheme, when you go to fill in the forms, be a little frightening at first. Don't be afraid of it, because the whole purpose of the state aid questionnaire is that, look, if you're not an undertaking, that's no problem. But also, if you are an undertaking, we have these 3 GBers, maybe we can fit your project into them. And again, it won't put a limitation on the funding. There wouldn't be a match funding need if you fit under one of those GBers. Now, where there's an exception, it comes to training. But look, if you're a training organization, if you've applied for funding before, you'll be aware of those limitations on the training block exemption. So.
Yeah, great. Look, I just commenting on some questions I got. It's the POBL event. I'm happy to put them in the follow-up email. There's a link, and actually there are like 4 or 5 coming up now this year. They are excellent. I think it's an excellent opportunity to go there, meet, talk to people directly about this call and exchange. They have like a few lined up, and we will put them in the follow-up email, just letting everyone know. But I think also Emily already shared a link to it. So what I would like to ask is one question that I got. Is there any specific advice for social enterprises regarding these funding streams?
Well, social enterprises are eligible. So, I know it's that gray area between a community group and an SME. I suppose we just decided that social enterprises are eligible, that you're more towards the community group than the SME, because usually it's not for profit. So that certainly, again, depends on what your project idea is. And all these things, we can only give general advice because we don't know what your projects are. But look, if you have a project and if it's around wetlands, then reach out to the NPWS or ourselves, and we'll put you in touch with them. Or if it's around tourism, if it's tourism on a wetland, reach out to both the NPWS and Fáilte Ireland. And if it's again, if it is for an activity in the community, your local authority, first port of call, can you fit under an LECP project that they're working on? Or you might be surprised if you get in touch with them. Maybe they're stuck for ideas. I mean, we haven't heard from every local authority, so we know some have ideas,
Okay.
but others could be stuck.
Yes.
Because the just transition territories are that the national fund territory is different from the European fund territory, and as you heard me say earlier, the Midlands have been focused on it for a while, and the other counties have been looking at it, but maybe there's space in there to propose ideas to them.
Okay, great.
So that's and of course that community and enterprise scheme in November, like that's really the one if you have your own standalone idea to apply to that. But again,
Perfect.
that is linked to that local economic and community plan or regional enterprise plan. So even if you're going for that de minimis one later, it's actually worth doing now. Have a look get the draft plan off your local authority, or look at the existing regional enterprise plans. They're available online from the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment website. And have a look at those and see already where you align, so that when the call opens in November, maybe you can already have some discussions, because there will be a requirement there to demonstrate how you're aligning with those plans. As I said, they're very broad. You've got some high-level goals and stuff in there, so you should be able to find an alignment, but it's worth investigating now.
Great. Thanks a lot, Terry. Already like super great recommendations. Also, we're very happy about all the questions in the chat. Thank you. I would like to put 1 or 2 people now on mic. So in case you have a question that you would like to ask to Terry, I would invite you to raise your digital hand so that we can see that you would like to ask a question directly to Terry. You can then unmute yourself. Is there anyone who would like to speak up and to ask a question? Just checking. I give you a bit of time.
And don't be
my
afraid,
sound is on.
it's a complicated scheme, so don't worry. There's no silly questions, because it's a tough one to get your head around.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Brian Guinan here.
Yes, Brian, you go first, and then we have Caroline.
Yeah, I didn't
Thank
put
you.
my hand up, but yeah, I'm involved with a few things here in Portarlington. We've been talking about communities and different like two counties here with Laois and Offaly, and there's quite a lot going on. But we've been working with Emerge, and Johnny Sheehan would know. We started with him on he came alive with Suzanne, I think it was way back, and since then we've got a mentor. We've been mentored by Emerge, and we have done our interest, and now we've actually got a webinar tomorrow to tie it up. But Emerge actually is finishing, I believe they said, Kira said at the end of October, and I just wondered, do the wheel do? Because we have quite so much. Dairy ounce is our main focus for this application. It's one of the big bogs it's in Offaly, but it's so close to Portarlington that we're working together on it. And I just wondered if there was a mentoring group, because recently, a couple of weeks ago, Laois and Offaly had a meeting in the library, which was a 6-year look ahead plan for the town, which of course involves both counties. And we just got our submissions in. Well, we were asked to get them in by last Friday with our responses, and the Portarlington Community Development Association will be running the dairy ounce scheme, but the Portarlington Sustainable Energy Committee actually there was a 2-page request for the submissions, but they actually come up with about 10 pages of items that needed looking at in port. So really, my point is, when hopefully we will get funding from up and running for dairy ounce, we look like we have a lot of the boxes ticked. But then there's so many other areas that probably we need to go to different funds for help. That I just wondered, was there a mentoring system there, or do we just get the application form and go through it as a group?
Thank you. Yeah. So I can say just quickly, in general, like the Wheel Access Europe, the program, we're here for general support with your applications. If it comes to really specific questions, I would always point to the national contact points like Terry, because they will be able to answer to the more specific questions. We are happy to work with you. You can reach out to us at europe@wheel.ie. You just write us an email, and then we can set up a call. If it's like the general, we're very happy to have one-on-one support. But yeah, Terry is the one for the specific questions, right, Terry? I would say.
Yeah. So if well, not just me, but also like
yes,
if depending on the scheme so if you're not sure what scheme to go for, come talk to me, and then we'll direct you towards Fault Ireland or Pobble or whoever. With the stuff that Pobble are doing at the moment, it's worth going along to it and seeing if you see your project in there. As I said, if you don't, it probably will fit into that later scheme in November. But with Derry Ounce, I love Derry Ounce. I went there during I live in Portlaoise, so it's the closest beach to me. So it's a fantastic facility, and I was really delighted to hear that there's there's hopefully be permission now for like little pop-up things beside the beach, because it's something that was missing there. There was some opportunities.
That's all part of our overall plan, hopefully, where the water features are.
Yeah. So there's definitely, I think it's such a great resource to have there, Derry Ends, and really
Yeah, just one quick one, Terry. I know we're cut
Yeah.
for time, but I'm also involved with Offaly Tourism because I live in, well, I'm from Geishel, but you know, who own the tidy towns.
Yeah,
Abby Leaks,
congratulations.
thank you. Abby Leaks obviously did the
Yeah.
town, keeping it in Laois and Offaly. The last meeting we had a Board Namona rep there, and I don't want to be saying something I shouldn't, but I suppose that I thought it was the lack of interaction from them was more notable from my own observations, and I just wonder, even today, Board Namona wasn't mentioned, and you know, I know there's a railway track on Derryons, and you know, I would be obvious to me to first question would be, you know, is that going to be used as a greenaway, or, you know, who has the plans, or can we talk to them?
Yeah,
Or
I suppose I don't know is the answer. So the network of trails is still being developed out between Fáilte Ireland and Bord na Móna. So that sort of railway line is exactly the type of heritage infrastructure that would be reused, because it doesn't cause extra damage to the peatland to use that. But there is, and Fáilte Ireland are very conscious of it, that what's the point in building trails on bogs if nobody can get to the bog? So there's, and particularly with Derryowns, I think there's a good example there of that connection back to the town. So they're also, Fáilte Ireland are also looking at connections across non-Bord na Móna land to make use of those trails.
okay.
So definitely it's worth reaching out that while, yes, what happens on the bog is probably going to be Bord na Móna from the simple fact that they own the bog, and also it aligns with you know, they have workers that do need to be reskilled, and trail development is one way of doing that. But to actually use the trails, you need to link to towns, and you need to link to villages. So Fáilte Ireland are looking at that last mile connection as well. So there's opportunities there for that too.
Okay. Thanks, Brian, for the question. I would like to put one more person on, and I saw Caroline's hand up, but it's now down. Caroline, do you would like to ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's not so much a question. I suppose I put it into the questions there. I suppose there are so many funding streams, and that's wonderful. But for someone like myself, I work with social enterprises in North Tipperary. It's hard to keep up with all of them. And so even though you can mentor a group and assist a group in some ways, you do need access to information on the specific grant you're looking at. And sometimes I feel that there's a lot of referral to online guidelines, online webinars, email support. But I just think it would be very useful if the administrators of each program or scheme or grant, may not always be possible, but if there's someone that you can actually call and speak to with specific questions, I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, so if you reach out to myself, Caroline, in the first instance, now we can't always answer the phone straight away, particularly with remote working and whatnot. But if you contact our email address, we'll give you a shout back. It can take us some time depending on what we're working on. But we try to be as available as we can be. We don't always succeed at that, but we're trying. And then we have the backup with our delivery partners. So Pub will have a helpline, which is constantly, within working hours, looked after. And the same at Fáilte Ireland as well. They have a helpline as well. So we're trying to facilitate it as best we can, Caroline. But I know we don't always succeed, but we're trying.
Well, I suppose it's just a suggestion, maybe, you know, that should be almost as important, maybe a part of the program as other aspects, you know, because I think maybe some groups might miss out because it is so complicated, and because they do need maybe more assistance with it.
That's true, but again, that's where we're working with Pubble, and we have those information events, and we have the concept note paper. So it's I mean, we can't sit down with everybody and have them fill in an application. That would be the ideal world, but look, there's just not enough. There's not enough people to be able to do that. But I mean, definitely that Pubble. So on the 7th, that's a face-to-face event. That's an all-day event where you go and you sit and you talk to Pubble. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. So don't miss out on that.
Yeah, I'll go to that. Thank you.
Yes, so we try also to cover those information sessions in our newsletter, Caroline. If you sign up for that, for the Access Europe newsletter, not all of them are in there, but we try to cover all, like the most important ones, because we know also that it's like best to go and to talk to people one-on-one. I have one question in the chat. We have 1 minute left. Maybe we take this one because it's interesting. It's from Trevor, and he says that he's wondering, do all applications have to be linked to economic activity? In a just transition, social and community good are just as important in assisting the community to become empowered about addressing climate change and biodiversity loss.
It depends on
Is that
how
a quick
you
answer?
well, it depends on how you link it back. Now, I think there's a link to some sort of economic activity. So if by empowering the community you're able to demonstrate that you raise people's confidence and they're then able to go out and apply for jobs, then that link that could be a way of linking it. But you do need some sort of link to that diversification. Even the other 2 priorities link back to it somewhat. Now there's one exception, which is around the MPWS scheme, because of the nature conservation. Now they are looking at trails, but they're also looking at areas where you have a community bogland and you just leave it aside. Because not, if you want to conserve nature, not everything has an economic output. I suppose we live in a world where we measure things by economic output, and I would agree with Trevor very much that that's not often the most valuable output of an activity. But yeah, on the MPWS one, there is a conservation element of it, which is good. And if you are looking at community empowerment, unfortunately, I think you do have to try and link it back somehow to an economic activity, because the Commission will measure the success of the fund, and so will the community, on how many jobs does it create, has it diversified the economy, and we need to be able to prove that. So we need to be able to link back that way. And very quickly on John's question there, I'm just looking at it as well, covering all counties. Do get in touch. If you're covering all counties, get in touch with the Regional Enterprise Project Manager. Again, they're on the DETI website, so the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment website. I'll see if I can find the link there and put it in before the end of the chat.
Absolutely. We're also at the end of this webinar now, and I would like to thank Terry first of all for all your valuable recommendations and tips. I think people could reach out to you afterwards, right? Is there a contact?
Yeah, so if you get in touch, and not just me, but there's more than me working at EMRA.
Yes.
So if you reach out to EUJTF at emra.ie, a member of the team will get back in touch with you. And as I said, sometimes we can't, particularly if there's a specific project question. Something we will have to pass you on to Pubble or to Fáilte Ireland or to others, because it's also, I suppose, we can have general conversations and stuff, but if we start going into specifics, you start getting conflicts of interest and things like that. But and then it's down to the delivery partner. But look, we're there. If you reach out to us at that email address, one of us will be back in touch with you.
Right, we just shared this one. We will share all your slides afterwards. We will share this recording in the follow-up email. We will share probably also some more links of what was just mentioned. We have all of this collected in the chat. Thank you so much, Terry. Excellent.
No,
really
thanks.
Excellent input.
Thanks, Christina. It's great. It's great to be able to talk to people, because if people don't apply to the fund is a failure. So we're really happy to talk to everybody and really encourage everybody to apply. And as I always say, there's a website out there, eufunds.ie. Like
Yes.
if you apply to the JTF and it doesn't succeed, don't be disheartened. There's other funds and you can reuse your application. So putting together an application is never a waste of time.
Exactly. Or you could reach out to Access Europe, because we actually have this overview of all the EU funding programs. So if you say, look, this is probably it's not really fitting what you said, don't try to fit it too much to what like the calls of the Just Transition Fund are saying, then maybe it fits to a different EU program, a different call that is out there right now. On our website, you find all the calls that are there for and available for civil society organizations. So maybe it fits for something else then in the end. Yes. So thanks again, Terry. That was a very informative morning. I learned a lot myself. So thank you. And
thanks, Christina.
Hope to see you soon for another event. And thanks all for joining us. We will send a follow-up email probably today or tomorrow. I hope this was also informative for you all. And thanks a lot for joining us. Have a very good day, everyone.
Christina, very informative. Well done, and Terry.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for your question also,
Bye-bye.
Ryan. Thanks all.